Horror in our modern era has increasingly become the vehicle to push forth new and interesting ideas, in part fueled by a return to formalistic tendencies, genre blends, and young talented upstart writers and directors. Take, for example, Ari Aster's 2018 film Hereditary. At first glance, the film unravels a tale that begins with the death of the Graham's family matriarch. However, as the family tries to process and come to terms with this tragedy, a second, much larger catastrophe occurs as the mendacious nature of the matriarch comes to light, compounded with supernatural and pernicious forces that start to rip the family apart. So, what would I like to discuss within Hereditary? About 15 minutes into the film, Stephen, a member of the Graham family, is in class. As his teacher starts to talk about Hercules and the predetermined fate or destiny within Greek tragedy, this, on the surface, obviously alludes to the family's assigned roles that facilitate the rise of the hell god Paimon, and how free will for them is entirely a construct. On a visual level, this plays within the very structure and artificial nature of the film through its repeated use of framing, which is usually in a stage manner, as various borders fill in the screen. Simply put, it's as if we're watching a play. Nonetheless, let's dig deeper. One of the key recurring aspects within Hereditary is the act of looking forward and, more importantly, the act of looking back. For instance, let us look at the shocking first act twist that propels the rest of the film, that comes to a head with the death of Charlie, the youngest member of the Grahams, wherein Peter inadvertently leads to her death, but refuses to look back at the aftermath and decides to drive forward towards home and head to bed, leaving his parents to find his sister's decapitated body the following morning. This imagery is proliferated throughout the film, with jump scares, the act of noticing a terrifying figure, but refusing to look back at it. Furthermore, the act of looking back itself is not just regulated to the literal act of physically gazing. We can also see it in Annie's cathartic process of recreating dioramas of both her mother and Charlie, or perhaps going back in time through family photo albums. Looking back at Greek tragedy, we can see the similarities of this recurring theme in the tale of the lovers Orpheus and Eurydice, wherein Eurydice dies when poisoned by a viper. Orpheus spends most of his days lamenting about his lost soulmate through song. Once he reaches the underworld, he is allowed to bring Eurydice back on the sole condition he does not look back at her until they enter the human realm. While he managed to do this for most of the journey back, curiosity and distrust take over him as he doubts Hades' sincerity and looks back at Eurydice just before she can enter the land of the living, thus losing her forever. We can relate this with Annie as her lamenting and grief take her on a similar journey. While Orpheus engages in song to remember his beloved, Annie does so with her dioramas, specifically recreating the scene of the accident. Or perhaps when we see her at the grief support group, or engaging her family to talk about it. The literal underworld is usurped by a sequence of seances led by a mysterious candle. In the end, however, unlike Orpheus, she is not tempted to look back, but rather retreats and wants to move forward, to which it's too late. Lastly, the act is not strictly confined to the characters within the film, but rather to our engagement as viewers. Throughout the film, we are subjugated to various scares and set pieces. We're unsure what we were actually seeing. Much like Orpheus and his inability to trust Hades and fully presume that Eurydice is actually behind him, this can tie into the main theme of the myth, trust. In Hereditary, the theme is prominent throughout the film between Peter betraying the trust of his mother and Charlie, Steve's trust in Annie.
I know you don't trust me, and there's nothing I can do about that.
Or perhaps even the trust between Annie and her mother, who could have never imagined her mother associating with such nefarious elements. The second piece of fiction I want to juxtapose to Hereditary relates explicitly to the scene with the teacher we first explored, The Woman of Trachis by Sophocles, which relates the events that led up to and include Hercules' death. In it, Demonera, Hercules' wife, unwittingly causes his ruin when she gifts him a shirt that is mixed with hydra poison and a centaur's blood of whom Hercules killed years before. Whilst dying, Hercules mentions how he is on fire, burning up while simultaneously feeling weakened like a woman, and is finally put on a funeral pyre to be burnt alive. In Hereditary, the poison metaphor is obvious through Charlie's allergic reaction to the cake. Furthermore, Demonera translates to either man-eater or destroyer. In Hereditary, a realization is that Annie never wanted Peter, wanting to abort him and at times destroying both his masculinity and confidence. To further this point, the death of her husband Stephen is reminiscent to that of Hercules and Demonera. While Annie gives Peter the book of their deceased daughter, letting him, like Hercules, catch fire and die at the hands of a deceased person, like our revered warrior. But why this allusion to Hercules, probably the most well-known masculine figure in the Western world?
Hercules.
Hereditary makes a point to showcase how the men within the family unit act outside of male stereotypes. Peter is indecisive, meek, and we see him cry on multiple occasions. Stephen, the patriarch, is not a bedrock whatsoever, is immediately distrustful of his wife, unsupportive, and completely fails at being a protector. Perhaps the intent is to confront and attack these gender norms and stereotypes, that in modern society we should abandon these ancient constructs and move toward a fluid society, leaving these archaic definitions to the hell gods. In a way, predetermined fate and destiny play into gender constructs and how we are basically confined to them since birth. It's fascinating to see how Midsommar reverts the end of Hereditary, almost as if they're balancing each other out. While Hereditary is about the continuation of male dominance and gender roles at whatever cost, Midsommar shows the toxic male attitude and culture routinely dying and showing the inherent weakness within, as the matriarchy flourishes. Even the character names within Hereditary play within this. The presumed fictional name of Joan's deceased son, Louis, translates to renowned or revered warrior. Stephen originates in ancient Greek as garland or crown, a further perpetuation of the patriarchy and lineage passed down to male heirs. Peter originates as the Greek word for pebble, which at times were used for divination and seeing the ultimate fate of individuals. We can even look at Charlie's name, to which the masculine version means free man, an ironic, cruel twist of predetermined fate. By building off Greek tragedy and myth, Hereditary manages to be both a meditation of grief and trauma within the family that coalesces into a haunting entry within horror, as both mysterious and unanswered elements from the past come forth in devastating and deadly results. It also can showcase the damaging mark a family can have on one another if open and honest communication is denied. Sometimes the biggest stranger of all can be the person you share a kitchen table with.